why do you think that is? Like, why do you think that, you know, despite the fact that you did actually pull out some pretty good numbers, that, you know, you just didn't get noticed by like the kind of zeitgeist, as you called it?
Yeah. So it's a super interesting one, and it's not like, when I speak about this, I'm trying not to come across as like the cynical kind of like, you know, nihilist, like, you know, it's just random and luck and whatever. But the way that I've sort of see it and understand is it could be a combination of different factors, and I guess it's up to people's interpretation as what they think it's more of. But obviously, the first thing you got to qualify is like, is your music good enough? Like, you have to hit a standard where you say it's pleasant to listen to or whatever, right? So let's say you've hit that, which might already be hard enough in itself, but let's say you get above that level where you think it's good enough that, you know, it sounds like other songs on Triple J or whatever. Then I think it must come down to either luck, in terms of maybe someone listens to a song on the right day and decides to play it. It can come down to sort of nepotism, like, do you know someone within Triple J, or someone who can somehow have sort of influence, or your brother's friend is the, you know, the bassist in Spacey Jane or whatever it might be. Or, and then the last one I can see is like, to an extent, just your budget. Like, if you have, I sort of solemnly believe that if you had $1 million and you have a song which is okay, you could get it pretty much everywhere. And that's not to say that that's wrong and that system is wrong or whatever, but there's just a few instances where you look at certain artists who have really big followings that never get on Triple J, and then there's certain artists who have no following who get on Triple J, and there doesn't really seem to be a pattern to it. If, you know, because my idea was, if I achieve these numbers, Spotify based sort of thing, surely that's sort of an indication that it will be good enough for that, but it didn't, you know, transpire that way. And so I can only guess it's a mix of these things. In terms of which one more, I don't know, but that's sort of my thinking.
I think you're kind of at least in the right ballpark with your assessment there. You're correct in saying, in my opinion, that it's really hard to tell. I guess we are just kind of making a lot of assumptions, and that's kind of like what I've done a little bit as well on some of the videos that I've made on my YouTube channel, where I'm talking about Triple J and their influence in the Australian music media. I kind of talked about that a little bit in the one I made about Spacey Jane, which you kind of also alluded to a few minutes ago, how they kind of made this really strong local following through playing a lot of live shows, right? And then eventually got picked up by Triple J. So, you know, they're a good example of a band who, you know, really worked hard to get played on Triple J. And I think probably another fact that we need to allude to is that, you know, Triple J doesn't mean everything for finding a following or finding streams and success in Australian music, but they sure as hell like do a lot. Like they're definitely a bridge from being okay following to like pretty good following to like massive following in Australia. So if you don't get played on their station, like, and you make alternative music in Australia, then you're really disadvantaged. That's for sure. Right?
Do you know the band Old Mervs?
I don't know that band, no.
So they're another one where they're just this two-piece surf rock band from Perth, and they're really popular, like something like 50,000
actually,
listeners.
The Perth band Old Mervs. Yeah, I've heard of them, and I've heard a couple of their songs.
And so
came across them streaming.
And so in my eyes, they're like the perfect Triple J candidates. Like, they've got a surfy Australiana vibe. They're very genuine. They're great musicians, whatever. And I just remember the other day I was talking to one of the guys, and so they're big. Some of their songs have over 1 million streams on Spotify.
Yeah, right. Now they've probably got a few thousand followers on Facebook and Instagram as well, right? Probably pushing like 10,000 maybe.
Yeah, they're by no means anything to scoff at or whatever. And the other day I was talking to him, and he was like, man, we got played on the first time, like on Triple J, after we'd already hit like 1 million streams. Like, so you know what I mean? Like there was no indication. They just suddenly, they didn't get played for whatever reason, and then they did.
You know, I think hitting 1 million streams, and I'm just kind of guessing, maybe like creating a bit of a conspiracy here, but I think once you hit 1 million streams, Triple J definitely notices you.
They have to. They have to.
They have to, right? Because I know, like
Yeah.
Spacey Jane, for example, they might have been played on Triple J once or twice, just as a spot play before they hit 1 million streams, with probably like Feeding the Family.
Yeah.
But once they hit 1 million, that's when they started playing their new releases. But even like Feeding the Family, for example, which I think might be their second highest streamed song on Spotify, if you were to look at the statistics somehow, you would probably find that it's probably not been played on the station like at all, maybe once or twice or something, because it was their second ever single or whatever, and it was when Triple J weren't giving them attention. So yeah, I think that is a super interesting point. And I mean, Old Mervs are just one example, right? There's so many, and all over Australia. And I feel like, especially here in Perth, it's really hard to get noticed when you're so far away. So if you can get to like the 1 million streams, or if you can get to like 10,000 followers on Facebook or Instagram, or kind of points like that, I feel like they must have some sort of like scouting system that their workers have at Triple J, where people are kind of following that. Because at the moment, like, and this is what I've spoken about in some of the videos that I've made, and you also have alluded to in your videos, is that it does kind of seem weird that there's people like that, or bands like that, like Spacey Jane, who work so hard for so long, get nowhere, and then eventually get picked up. And then there's some who just like upload one song to Triple J on Earth and boom. All of a sudden, high rotation, right? So, I mean, I think that's another really interesting one. And I think there's different examples who have different reasons. So like, for example, one that I talked about in one of my videos is Middle Kids. So, and I love Middle Kids. I think they're an excellent band.
Same.
I've seen them live a couple of times, and they're a great band. And
good.
Their song Edge of Town, when they released it on Triple J on Earth, they hadn't even performed it live, and Triple J put it straight on high rotation. And ever since then, they've had a great following, had a lot of success. And I would say the reason for that song getting played on Triple J on heavy rotation so quickly was just because, like, the first point you raised, because it was so good, it's such a good song that they heard it and they were like, we have to play this, and it just took our breath away when we heard it. But then like, this is when it gets subjective, because there's tens and probably hundreds of other songs that go through that same process of just getting uploaded, and then someone at Triple J hearing it and just being like, oh, this is a good song, or it takes the breath away of someone who works there, and then it just goes on heavy rotation, or is it because of a connection, like, for example, let's say Tones and I, someone who's, gets a lot of flack for being this sort of artist who supposedly, doesn't make good music. And in my opinion, like, comparing Tones and I's songs to Middle Kids songs, I would say like that's a pretty good assessment of like some amazing music versus some pretty average music. So yeah, like, that makes me wonder, like, is there a connection there that Tones and I had? Maybe I think she got picked up by a guy who had a lot of money when she was busking, and then he had a connection with Triple J, maybe. Or, it could have just been that someone really liked her song when she uploaded it. And it just went straight there. So, I mean, that's the challenge, isn't it? Like, how do you, as a new up and coming local musician who, showed some pretty good numbers when you uploaded your music onto Spotify, battle that? How do you get from that?
You don't want to, because the thing is, well, you don't want to take away from anyone's like idea that they're, every person who's put out music and has got anywhere with it has always worked hard to an extent. They've always So it's not to take anything away from them. It's just saying that sometimes it's just like, what do you do? You know, it's and it's not even if you talk, not even Triple J, you talk about things like Spotify editorial playlists, which are this massive indicator of if you get on one, you're gonna do pretty well, or at least it's a really good foundation to build upon. And you just, it's so hard to predict and know, especially because as I'm sure you know, Liam, like whenever you create a video or put out a song, when you can be as critical as you want about it personally and say, you know, I think this is the best thing ever, I think this is okay, this is average, at least this is as good as that. I mean, we could just be wrong, right? Like,
yeah,
it could just actually suck. But you'd hope that if you go, well, I think it's this good, and you expect it to get that result and then it doesn't, you're like, well, you know, what's wrong? Is it the things really, is it the art itself is really bad? Do I not put in enough effort towards marketing? Is it the connections I haven't made? Makes it confusing and difficult to know what to do better next time. You know what I mean?
yeah. Yeah, I'd almost love to be like a fly on the wall in Triple J sometimes. I'd love to know like what happens, like, you know, let's take like this Middle Kids one, for example, that we were talking about or that I brought up. How exactly did that go down? You know, how exactly did that get uploaded, Edge of Town, their song get uploaded to the internet and make it from there to heavy rotation, you know, and not say that I don't think that should have happened, because I think it should have, because it's an awesome song, right?
Yeah.
But like what actually transpires there? And I feel like there's a level of you know, like, what's the word, like not cover up, but lack of transparency, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like this is what I'm guessing happens. Someone who works there hears the song, you know, because they must all work 8 hours a day, constantly listening to new music that gets uploaded to Unearthed. And then, you know, someone hears it and they go, wow, that's an awesome song. And they turn to the person sitting next to them and say, check out this song, Middle Kids from Sydney just uploaded this song called Edge of Town, check it out. And a few of them listen to it and they're like, all right, let's put that one down. We'll talk about that one in a meeting. And then, you know, this is what I'm guessing happens. They talk about it in a meeting and then they say, yep, who thinks this song should be on heavy rotation? There's some sort of vote, or it has to be everyone says yes. And then it goes on. It gets on heavy rotation, you know? So that's like random people who work for a not-for-profit government entity who are mostly like below the age of 30, not to say there's anything wrong with being young, but like, I don't know, just lack of experience sometimes can be an interesting topic. You know, basically deciding whether or not someone can make an income from music for the next 10 years or not.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. That's a good point.
It's just crazy when you think about that. And it's not to say that like, I don't think that should happen. I'm just saying like, that's just really interesting that that's what happens.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so for example, this is something that I'll openly and shamelessly admit to. I love the 1975. I think their music is fantastic. I think it's so interesting and new and refreshing. For whatever reason, they don't get played on Triple J for some reason, right?
It's a weird one.
Even though I would say I think they qualify sound-wise.
Oh,
What's the difference?
There's totally.
What's the difference between the 1975 and the Glass Animals?
Yeah,
like
perfect.
Like there's one. They're both huge. They both make weird alt rock. They're both from Britain, but for some reason, someone decided somewhere down the line, them no, them yeah. And it's like, I mean, as you do, but couldn't really understand the thinking why.